Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you're streaming the show on either station's streaming app, which I highly recommend because they are both free to download. They are both free to use, and you can listen to this or any show on these two fine radio stations through that app. Of course, there is another way to consume the show on a daily basis that is sweeping the nation, and that is to watch the show anywhere you scroll. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program. I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-24-7. 1313 is the number to be able to do exactly that. I have one guest today. He is Jay Paterno, son of Coach Pa. He is a trustee at Penn State. And I want to get his thoughts and get kind of an inside look at what these major institutions are thinking about the Protect College Sports Act and the future of college athletics. So he'll join me at 4:20. So the rest of the time, it's you and me. And the big story today, of course, is that Denver Broncos veteran players have reported to training camp. It is here. Football season is here, and we count down to the start of the regular season. And during training camp, look, it's a long time. There's a lot of topics that will come up, a lot of things to discuss, a lot of players to keep an eye on. The rookie class, maybe these guys that we're not talking about that pop in camp, all of this kind of stuff. So training camp, there's a wide-ranging conversation. But really, my interest level, and I think my interest level lies with what the most consequential things are with this Denver Broncos team, comes down to three things. Very simple. Bo Nix's ankle, Jalen Waddle's fit, and Davis Webb's ideas. That's what I want to hear the most about. That's what I'm following the closest. Right? And we start with Bo Nix's ankle. Right? Prognosis after that little hiccup there at the beginning of this seems to be good. I saw Luca Evans, terrific Broncos writer for the Gazette, interviewed his trainer, and his trainer said that Bo Nix trusts his ankle, which I think is maybe more than half the battle, right? We've seen this. Christian Brown is a great example recently in Colorado sports of a guy that just, what can happen if you don't trust your injury? Or the injured part of your body that is supposedly healed, is supposedly ready to go. If you don't trust it, then your play is going to suffer. So the fact that Bo Nix's trainer says he trusts the ankle, that's good news. Now, there's going to be a stress test, a few stress tests along the way this training camp, joint practices, preseason games, things like that, and we'll check along the way to see if Bo Nix still trusts the ankle. But right now, he trusts it, which is important. And there's also that lingering question of, did Sean Payton misspeak? Or is there really something with Bo Nix that even as much as he trusts the ankle is going to fail him? Right? When Sean Payton said he was predisposed, and then there was this tiff back and forth, Bo Nix kind of chastising Sean Payton for sharing that information. And then Sean Payton, you got it, you misquoted me, which nobody did. He actually said these things, but predisposed, meaning there was damage already that was only going to get worse. And now all of that is cleaned up. But what predisposed means is that Bo Nix has problematic ankles or a problematic ankle. So I don't think we fully know yet whether Sean Payton was actually using the right word and doing damage control, or he truly misspoke and used the wrong word. So Bo Nix's ankle is probably going to be at the forefront of the conversation every time he steps to the podium, every time he's out on the field. It's going to be, how is he moving? Does he take a hit? Does somebody go after the ankle? So it'll be the most talked about ankle in the history of Colorado sports. I will say that. And it already has been. So we're just adding to the lead here with Bo Nix's ankle. The second thing, Jalen Waddle's fit. Right? One of the most significant additions of any team across the NFL was the Broncos getting Jalen Waddle. And I thought that the fit was hand in glove. What I have seen from Jalen Waddle is exactly the type of number one receiver, albeit on the lower end of the spectrum. He's not, he's not that close to a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, and I think everyone can understand that. But he is, I do think, talented enough to be a number one wide receiver, and certainly in the Broncos wide receiver room, he's their most talented guy. But with Jalen Waddle's ability to run routes, get open early in the short passing game, and then turn those short completions into bigger gains with his ability to turn up the field and run, that's a great fit for what Bo Nix has shown his first couple of years in the league. And then also Jalen Waddle's separation downfield also fits in well, because the Broncos do like to air it out downfield on a few occasions every game. And Jalen Waddle fits in to both of those concepts in the passing game. So and nobody wants to hear this based on last year, Jalen Waddle also very good at wide receiver screens. So I don't think that's going away in the Broncos offense, even under Davis Webb. So I think that Jalen Waddle is a perfect fit as a player. And I think that he fits in so well with the Denver Broncos because he allows everyone else to kind of move down a peg and be in a spot that I think is more fitting for their talent level. Cortland Sutton being a number 2 wide receiver. Marvin Mims has the role that Marvin Mims has. You want to call him the third receiver, that's fine. And now you're only having to hope that either Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant emerge rather than needing both of them, which is kind of what you were doing last year. But we got to see it, right? We got to see Nix with his ankle and Jalen Waddle on the field, see how they're working together, see how that relationship is progressing, because I think it is vitally important to the Broncos' success this season that the two of them hit the ground running and are perfect fits with one another. And then the third thing, which kind of ties everything together, the Jalen Waddle fit, Bo Nix's health, Davis Webb. As the first-year offensive coordinator, I almost want to hear more from Davis Webb this training camp than I want to hear from Sean Payton. And that's not an anti-Sean Payton thing. It's that my level of intrigue lies far more with Davis Webb. How is he different than Sean Payton? Because given the way that the Broncos offense performed last year, there's no appetite for throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is not a total overhaul of the offensive system. That's not necessary. It worked. But the ways that Davis Webb is different is what I am very interested in. Quinn Meinerz spoke today at the opening of training camp, or reporting to training camp, whatever today is officially called. He showed up, spoke to the media. Here's Quinn Meinerz on working with Davis Webb now rather than Sean Payton as the head offensive play caller?
It's not necessarily like monotonous when you have the same. So it's nice to have, like, there's still some similar elements to this offense, but then there's a nice little like sprinkle of additions of what Davis has come up with, what Coach Streif has come up with, what Chris Morgan has come up with. So it's going to be good.
What are those things that Davis Webb is going to sprinkle in? I think there are three things that a lot of times last year I watched the Denver Broncos offense and wish they did these three things more. One, run the ball, right? We're all on board with this. The days of Sean Payton going up there every single week and saying, we got to run the ball. It's so important to run the ball. And yet the following Sunday, we just don't see it. Sean Payton is just never going to run the football. He was never going to. We kept waiting for it, and he kept promising you, the Broncos fan, that they would run the ball more, and they just never did. So is Davis Webb similar in that regard, that he'll tell us he wants to run the football, but then Sunday rolls around and he's got the play sheet in front of him and he'll look at a pass play and say, nah, that one's better? Is Davis Webb more committed to the run game? And dovetailing on that, is he more committed to the Bo Nix run game? Now, this is where his job gets tricky, right? Because I just talked about Bo Nix's ankle. And I do think, especially early on in the season, you got to be careful, right? So maybe we got to wait a little bit to see Davis Webb fully unleash Bo Nix and his ability to run. And depending on how his ankle is doing, does he have any setbacks? Does he re-injure it? All that kind of stuff. This may not be the year where we see Bo Nix fully realize his potential running the football. But I still want to see whether Davis Webb is less risk adverse when it comes to Bo Nix running the ball as Sean Payton was, right? Because Sean Payton's whole thing was, staying ahead of the chains and taking care of the football. And I think it's not that he doesn't believe in Bo Nix's ability to run the football. It's that if you're giving him the ability to run the football, there's a non-zero chance that he fumbles it or he takes a loss because he's not making the right decision when he runs the ball. And that's the thing that drives Sean Payton crazy more than anything else. And it's just a risk he is unwilling to live with. Is Davis Webb willing to walk that line a little bit more? I think Bo Nix would like to run the ball more. I don't think he wants to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson early in his career, but I do think that there's a little bit more that we can see from Bo Nix running the football. And I think Bo Nix realizes, all of these franchise quarterbacks, all of these elite franchise quarterbacks have a superpower, right? Something that they do that is unique and that they are one of the best at, right? With Josh Allen, and, well, it's a little bit nuanced difference. With Josh Allen, it's the power in his running game, right? His ability to just truck dudes over and be incredibly difficult to bring down because he's so big. Lamar Jackson, it's more how nimble he is and how fast he is and that you can't catch him when he runs the ball. With a Patrick Mahomes, it's his escapability, not necessarily his running ability. He's not as good of a runner with the ball as Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson is, but his escapability is fantastic. And then there's also, used to be anyway, the sense that if Patrick Mahomes had the football with the chance to win the game, you were going to lose. The other team, I mean. And that kind of leads into what Joe Burrow's is. Joe Burrow he's Joe Cool. He's unflappable. Bo Nix, we'll see with these one-score games. Maybe there's a Joe Burrow-like quality to Bo Nix, even though I would not say he's as even-keeled as Joe Burrow is. He's not as cool as Joe Burrow. But there's something to be said for the way that Bo Nix performed late in games last year. But the other thing is his legs. And for Bo Nix to truly ascend to the levels that Sean Payton thinks he will and be a top 4 quarterback in this league, I don't know how that's going to be Bo Nix strictly dropping back and throwing the football from the pocket. I just don't see that Bo Nix can be one of the best 4 quarterbacks in the league just doing that. So how much does Davis Webb realize that and want to unlock that with the idea that Bo Nix is coming off of a severe ankle injury? The other one aspect, so it's the running game with the running backs. Is Davis Webb different? Bo Nix running the ball, how different is Davis Webb's mentality when it comes to that? And then the tight end position. Right? I think many Broncos fans would just as soon live their entire rest of their existence without hearing the word joker in a football sense, because that has been in their minds, a massive flop. It's supposed to be this incredibly dangerous player, and it just doesn't look like Evan Ingram is that guy. Now, I think that the thing that the Joker does is make things easier for everybody else. But as far as Ingram and the tight end room, is Davis Webb a guy that wants to involve them more? Or does he look at Evan Ingram the same way Sean Payton did and say, hey, I'm going to run this guy out on routes. If he draws some extra attention, that opens it up for other people. So how different is Davis Webb? How different are the ideas? Bo Nix's ankle, Jalen Waddle's fit, Davis Webb's ideas. That's what I'm most looking out for as we embark on another training camp in Denver. I'll take your thoughts on what you're looking forward to, looking out for at Broncos training camp, 719-247-1313. You'll hear from Pat Surtain. You'll hear more from Quinn Meinertz. And a lot of Broncos talk coming your way over the course of the program. But in the meantime, coming up next, the latest with the Peyton Watson saga. You're listening to 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Why would you pay full price for something when you don't have to? Right? Makes sense. With sweet deals, you can save 50% or more at your local favorite eating establishments like Dickey's Barbecue Pit, Louie's Pizza, and more. You can eat local. You can spend less, all by shopping sweet deals now at extrasports1300.com and kvor.com. So we got more Peyton Watson stuff for you. And here's my thing. Because the Nuggets have been basically sitting on their hands all offseason, this is honestly, and I'm not trying to, put down Peyton Watson at all. It really, the amount of attention outweighs the player he is. I understand he's an intriguing player. He showed some flashes, and all things being equal, I think the Denver Nuggets would very much like to have him for the next few years and be able to see what truly he can do. And at worst, I think he's, a good defensive player. If he's just that, then that's valuable. But is it $28, $29 million valuable? Absolutely not. And therein lies the rub. Okay, we don't know truly what Peyton Watson is as a player. We don't even truly know what he will be as a player, which is making this negotiation with the Denver Nuggets a bit difficult. And as an aside, giving way too much attention for who I think, even at their best, is a good role player on the Denver Nuggets. But it's what we've got in Nuggets land right now. And the story's evolving, it's changing. Reports today suggesting that the Nuggets offer to Peyton Watson was 5 years and $70 million, which is encouraging to me because that seems fair. Right? Getting above $25 million just seems, especially with where the Nuggets are right now financially and how little Peyton Watson has flashed into being a core type of player for the Denver Nuggets moving forward. I just think it's crazy when we start talking about him being worth $25 million or more. I just don't think that he is. So it's heartening in the midst of everything that I have criticized the Denver Nuggets about, that they do seem to not be going overboard in their negotiation from Peyton Watson. This tells me that they have learned their lesson from Christian Braun. Right? They were only negotiating against themselves, and I think ended up paying Christian Braun too much. Which is why I do kind of understand from Clutch Sports and Rich Paul and Peyton Watson's side of this, that you're going, wait a minute. You just paid another restricted free agent at the beginning of last season $25 million, and you're putting my client under that number? Because here's the thing. Maybe Peyton Watson and Rich Paul have an inflated view of who Peyton Watson is as a player. But so much in these contract negotiations, it's not about finding a comparable player. It's about, you did this, and now my guy gets to be paid. We see this with quarterbacks in the NFL, right? We see 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks jump Patrick Mahomes, and we're going, well, wait a minute. But it's because it's their turn. There is no debate, despite how you may feel about Christian Braun in this moment in time, there is no debate that the more productive player over the course of his time with the Denver Nuggets has been Christian Braun. Now, you may be more bullish on the future of Peyton Watson, but it's that balance of what you think a guy is going to be, but also what he has been. And Christian Brown, in his defense, was a key role player in the Denver Nuggets championship team. Should they have paid him when they did? No. Should they have paid him as much? No. But if you're trying to gauge Christian Brown versus Peyton Watson, I understand why the Denver Nuggets are going this way, but I also understand why Peyton Watson and his team are like, you got to be kidding me. So how much are the Nuggets willing to go up? How much is Clutch Sports willing to go down? Because we can't forget that the Nuggets have the hammer here. Yes, they are into the second apron, but they can sign Peyton Watson tomorrow with no restriction whatsoever. Okay, so they still have the leverage in the negotiating. And they've also picked up another layer to the power that they have in the negotiations, because now that they are going into the second apron, it does make it more difficult for them. It does limit the market more. And that helps Denver as well. I'm not going to say that that's the Nuggets' intent here when they matched OKC's offer to Spencer Jones. But the fact of the matter is the market already was drying up, and the market is probably more dried up now that the Nuggets are where they are financially. But as I've told you, this can go on to the end of September. Jonathan Kuminga's saga with the Golden State Warriors went up to the very deadline before he had to sign his qualifying offer. So this negotiation, there may be no end in sight, but there is a potential off-ramp here, and that is trading Peyton Watson. Now, there was a report yesterday that the Denver Nuggets wanted the equivalent of 2 first-round picks for Peyton Watson. When they say equivalent, yes, you could do 2 first-round picks, or you could do a first-round pick and a player that is valued at a first-round pick. So a good young player to essentially replace what could be a good young player in Peyton Watson. And that's where I think some people are a little confused on the second apron stuff. Also, one, it doesn't kick in until you're past the trade deadline. I think you still have to pay the luxury tax penalties and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the restrictions that we talked about yesterday, those aren't implemented until you go past the trade deadline over the second apron. So the Nuggets right now, in terms of trading Peyton Watson, can dump him for 2 first-round picks. They can do that. Now, they would have a roster spot that they would need to figure out a way to fill, but they could do that. Problem is, Brooklyn and the Clippers are the only 2 teams that right now look like they can just absorb a $20-25 million contract. Or they could get a young player, preferably one that is a point guard and a pick, because the player that they would be acquiring would make less money than Peyton Watson. So that is still something that the Nuggets could do. But as you might imagine, in hearing me say that, there may not be a ton of options. And that's just the fact of the matter when it comes to Peyton Watson, both from his perspective and the Nuggets' perspective. There just aren't a lot of options. There's just not a robust market for Peyton Watson or the Denver Nuggets to deal with anyone other than each other. If the Nuggets can stay closer to their part, their number, then I think that the Nuggets should proceed and get this guy signed. But if he's not willing to go that low and it becomes highly contentious, and the reality is you're going to lock him up to the qualifying offer and then immediately lose him the next offseason, then you have to get something for him. The Nuggets are not in a position, even though they seem to be doing this year after year after year, they are truly not in a position to just lose players. But time is plentiful here. But it does seem like there's a little bit of movement because now we know the range we're dealing with here. And it does seem like the Denver Nuggets are broadening their horizons as far as what they would be willing to take back in a deal for Peyton Watson. Still seems like a high price. And I think for a lot of teams that would have to come down. But at least they're now, because before it was we will keep Peyton Watson and we'll pay him whatever we can to keep him. Well, now it's, well, no, we're actually negotiating with him. And we're kind of going low here on him. And we're also amenable to hearing trade offers from other teams. And then there's the added dynamic of when you do make a Peyton Watson decision, are you willing to stay in the second apron or not? And reporting, the belief out there seems to be that the Nuggets are not content with being in the second apron. They don't want to be the only team. I said yesterday on the show, I from a morbid curiosity standpoint, and this speaks to my lack of belief in the Denver Nuggets as a championship contender next year, I kind of want to see it. I kind of want to see them in the second apron, just what it looks like. Everyone's all doom and gloom about the second apron. Well, let's see a team try to navigate it. Let's see if Josh Kroenke would legitimately contemplate trading Nikola Jokic if they were in the second apron. I want to see it. But it doesn't seem like the Nuggets are willing to do that. That screams to me Cam Johnson getting salary dumped, but maybe there's an order of operations here that they got to get closer to figuring out what they're doing with Peyton Watson before they do anything else. And again, Peyton Watson the qualifying offer deadline is not till October 1, and the second apron stuff hits them after the trade deadline. So the Nuggets have time. Unfortunately, this is pretty much all the Nuggets conversation that we can have, except for the fact that they have hired a lead assistant, Dave Yeager of Memphis and Sacramento fame. Guy who has been a head coach in the league, as was reported that the Denver Nuggets were looking for. Defensive-minded coach, which I think the Nuggets are wise to be looking for. But I've told you what this sets up. Now that Dave Yeager will truly be the lead assistant, one chair down from David Adelman. Now it goes one of two ways. Either having Yeager coordinating the defense, if you will, to cover up one of David Adelman's blind spots, and learning from a guy who's been through it with multiple organizations, makes David Adelman improve as a head coach and become the head coach that the Nuggets think he can be. That's the ideal scenario. Or don't work and David Adelman's just not the guy, and then you have a cheap option for a guy that has been a head coach twice over in this league to replace David Adelman. Again, there have been a lot of questionable decisions made by the Denver Nuggets. I think this is a really good one. And I don't know what side I'm on this. I'm not super high on David Adelman right now, so I guess I would lean towards the Dave Yeager taking over at some point. But this gives the Denver Nuggets the ability to see, okay, David Adelman, are you going to grow into this job a little bit more, having an experienced head coach by your side? Or were you a nice caretaker head coach? Guys like you, but you're just not the type of coach that's going to be able to get the Nuggets back to an NBA Finals. But in either of those scenarios, the Nuggets, I think they're covering their bases here. So it feels like they've made about as many additions to the coaching staff as they have the roster, which I don't know if that's what you were hoping for going into this offseason, but that's what the situation is. 719 24/7 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Air Force football season coming up just around the bend. Duquesne, the first weekend of September. And if you want to go see that game and every single Falcons home game, we have your opportunity. Starting next week, you could qualify to win 4 season tickets to Air Force by listening to Colorado Springs Morning News with Jim Arthur and Sean Martinez, 5 to 8 a.m. on 740 KVOR. And then more chances to qualify on this show in the afternoons. We'll take some qualifiers, and then we'll pick a winner in advance of the home opener against Duquesne, which is also this season opener. So keep that in mind. Be listening for your chance to qualify to win 4 season tickets to the upcoming Air Force football season. So I took my sons to Rockies game a couple of weeks ago. They were playing the Reds. I guess it was a week ago this past Saturday. And because I never have a Saturday off during switchback season, so wanted to do something. Go to a Rockies game. We find out that there is a giveaway for this game, and the giveaway is hot dog hat. Suffice to say, it piqued our interest. We get to the stadium, think well less than an hour before the game, which I don't go to a lot of Rockies games these days. My family used to have season tickets, so I went to a ton of them. In my experience, showing up about an hour before the game would guarantee you the giveaway. Unless it was some insane thing like, remember when Beanie Babies were huge and they gave away Beanie Babies? Like, you had to be there 2 hours before, lined up and ready to rock. For a hot dog hat, I thought an hour before the game was just good enough. We walk in right by the Sandlot Brewery, no hot dog hats. Didn't see any hot dog hats. We go and sit on our seats, and all of a sudden, people with hot dog hats start trickling down. So I don't know what happened. I'm not blaming anybody, but it feels like these people are arriving later than we are, and they have hot dog hats, and we do not. Well, I felt bad for my son, who is particularly keen on getting a hot dog hat. But when he saw the hot dog hat, he said, this is actually lame, because it was a purple Rockies hat with hot dogs all over it. He thought it was going to be the hat in the shape of a hot dog, which I'm kind of wondering what the utility of that is. Is he truly going to be more likely to wear a hat shaped like a hot dog or a hat with hot dogs on it? But I didn't question him. I just, breathed a sigh of relief that he was not upset that we did not get the hot dog hats. Although deep inside me, festering was this idea of we were here early enough. They probably didn't have the hot dog hats ready for us as we walked in. And a bunch of people that showed up later than we did got them. That's what I will believe till my dying days. So we move on, right? Life goes on. Get a text yesterday from my good buddy and broadcast partner with the Switchbacks, Roland Vargas. Sends me a little screenshot. Apparently these hot dog hats are going for $100 a pop on the secondary market. Which begs the question, is there a limit to the profit that you can make or the things that you could sell on the secondary market and make money? Because I did not feel like the hot dog hats were this rare collector item that people would be willing to pay $100 for. But lo and behold, they're going for $100 a piece, which restokes the flames of anger within me. Not because I want a hot dog hat, but because I could be pocketing a cool $300. Taking my hat and my two sons' hats and selling them. So first, my children were gypped on the hot dog hat giveaway when we arrived at Coors Field. Now I'm being gypped out of $300. They're taking money out of my pocket. Or more accurately, not putting money in my pocket. So, I don't know who I need to talk to here, but I am an aggrieved party, and I demand restitution. Either give me a hot dog hat that I will turn around and sell, or just cut out the middleman and give me $300. That's all I'm asking from the Colorado Rockies. I think that that's totally fair. On another Rockies note, trade deadline coming up August 3rd. What are the Rockies going to do? Well, they're going to sell. You know they will. They're a last place team. They should be selling, but they reportedly released a list of players they are willing to trade. Kyle Freeland is on there, which might hit some people here in this state a little bit hard, being that he is homegrown. I don't know what the market for Kyle Freeland is. Have you watched this guy pitch this year? I don't know that he has a robust market, with all due respect. But Mickey Moniak, Jake McCarthy are on there, which are some interesting pieces that maybe they can fetch something in return for. But what stuck out to me is that one name was omitted, and that is Hunter Goodman. They are not putting him on a list of players they're willing to move. You have to get Paul DePodesta inspired to move on from him. And reportedly, teams were balking at the asking price, which I'm okay with. I don't think that with the last major trade this franchise made was the Nolan Arenado trade. There's no reason to rush. Do not cave to these sharks and just give them Hunter Goodman for pennies on the dollar. Like, have some pride. You want to turn over a new leaf? You want us to believe that this is a new era of Rockies baseball? Don't get destroyed in a trade for an all-star. So now it seems like teams are trying to lower the price by saying, oh, we don't really like his defense. Okay. He's in defensive war, he's one of the top 15 catchers in the league. Not great at throwing out base runners. That is fair. But I don't think he is a terrible defensive catcher. This, to me, reeks of these contending teams trying to strong-arm a lesser franchise than the Colorado Rockies. And my message to Paul DePodesta, hold firm, hold the line. You want to trade Senzatella, Freeland, Moniak, McCarthy. If you can get something for him, get something for him. This Hunter Goodman, when they do move on from Hunter Goodman, it will be the most significant trade this franchise has made since Nolan Arenado. You got to get it right. You got to get it right. And this trade deadline doesn't feel like the time. It feels hasty to do it now. So I think Hunter Goodman's going to remain a Rocky past the trade deadline. How many players from this list are grabbed by other teams? That remains to be seen, because the fact of the matter is Hunter Goodman's one of the few players that has trade value for the Colorado Rockies. Coming up next, Pat Surtain, Quinn Meinertz on the Standard. Is it Super Bowl or bust? Welcome in. Great to have you, whether you're listening to the show on the Extra Sports 1300 app or the 740 KVOR app. Either way is good. Or if you are watching the show anywhere you scroll, just as long as anywhere means Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, and Instagram. You can follow at Extra Sports 1300 at 740 KVOR. You can follow me on those platforms, or a couple of those platforms anyway. I am on X at Gingerly Tweets, on Instagram at Gingerwatch. If you'd like to take your participation in today's show to the next level, by all means, you can call or text 719-247-1313, or you can simply drop a comment on the live stream. Jay Paterno, trustee at Penn State, son of Joe Paterno, will join me in the next segment. Does he feel like the Protect College Sports Act is going to be passed? And what if it's not? What does college sports look like moving forward? In the meantime, Broncos opening up training camp. Veterans reporting today, and veterans include Pat Surtain, who was asked the inevitable question, given that the Broncos were one game away from the Super Bowl: is this season Super Bowl or bust?
No, obviously that's the main goal, but it starts right here in training camp. It starts through early on in the season. I think our main focus is to start off fast, start off hot and early, so that way we could prepare ourselves to get to that stage.
Now, there's no argument that the next step in the progression of this franchise is to get to a Super Bowl. So in that case, yes, it is Super Bowl or bust. If it's you get to the Super Bowl, or this season was not as successful as the one before. But it also depends on your view of this Denver Broncos team. And the fact of the matter is, the Denver Broncos, like the New England Patriots, like the Indianapolis Colts, were able to take advantage of the traditional powerhouses in the AFC being down: Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City. So whether you believe that the Broncos are capable, what if those teams get back to where they normally have been throughout the last, decade? Now, is it Super Bowl or bust? Now, do you think that the Broncos must make a Super Bowl? And to say nothing of one of the few AFC teams besides the Kansas City Chiefs that have played in a Super Bowl anytime recently, the Cincinnati Bengals. So it depends as well. You can't just say, well, they got to take a step forward or it's a bust. Because I look at last year being unique in the AFC. If the AFC returns to some normalcy, at least with a couple of those teams I mentioned, getting back to where they have been, then I don't know that I expect the Denver Broncos to get to a Super Bowl. And therefore, to me, it's not Super Bowl or bust, because maybe they kind of outkicked their coverage last year. I believe that Baltimore is going to be really good. Buffalo, if they hadn't, did what they did against the Denver Broncos, which was implode, and that's another part too. I think the Bills deserve more criticism than the Broncos deserve credit for that playoff game, especially Josh Allen and the way he played. So I think that the Bills are going to be there. I don't know if I'm in on the Bills anymore as a Super Bowl team, but they're certainly going to be one of the best. I think Baltimore will be. Kansas City, I don't see right now how Kansas City is the best team in the AFC West. I don't see it. I know they have Mahomes, but they've had Mahomes, and it's just the supporting cast is just not good enough. So I got to see a lot from Kansas City before I move in the direction that the Chiefs are going to rule the AFC West again. I'm not so sure they're not the third best team in the division. Are they better than 6 wins? Absolutely. But depending on who you ask, Broncos, Chargers, those are 2 teams that some people are picking to go to a Super Bowl. One or the other, obviously, because they're not both allowed to go. I think the AFC's, some of it's going to return to normal, which makes a more congested field. I don't know, for me, based on my expectations for them, that it's Super Bowl or bust. But as was the case last year, and I want to get out in front of this because this was it was a good conversation, but it was one that we had quite a bit around the AFC Championship. Expectations can change. You want to say it's the goalpost being moved back. I say it's the bar being raised. If you're a team like the Denver Broncos that we're stacking up all of these wins and we're leading the division and all of this kind of stuff, I think it's perfectly reasonable to go, okay, you've shown yourself to be better than what I thought you were going into the season. So now maybe it is Super Bowl or bust, especially if they survive this gauntlet they have to begin the season, or what appears to be a gauntlet. Right? You can, I mean, Charles Dickens fans will appreciate this. I mean, it's a tale of 2 seasons with the Denver Broncos right now. The first half of the season looks like a minefield. The second half of the season looks like, you know, the non-conference schedule of Alabama football. So but I expect the Denver Broncos to make a move in the second half based on what their schedule looks like. I expect them to do that. What I don't expect is for them to come out on the plus side of that early season schedule. And if they do that, they will have either the teams that they're playing are not nearly as good as I thought they'd be going into the season, or something befalls them like a key injury, or the Denver Broncos, everything's clicking and they look better. So to me, it's a very nuanced conversation. It's not black and white, given how the Broncos were able to get to the AFC Championship last year. The teams that I am not out on in the AFC that were down last year, I think the AFC is going to get more crowded. Last year is wide open. Anybody want to take the AFC? This year, I don't think it's going to be that way. I think it's going to be and Denver is certainly one of the teams in that mix, right? I think it's Buffalo and New England out of the East that you have to take seriously. I think it's Baltimore and, stop me if you've heard this one before, healthy Cincinnati, that I think you have to take seriously. Once Joe Burrow gets hurt, then you can be done with Cincinnati. But as long as Joe Burrow's upright and healthy, you got to take them seriously. I think you have 3 teams in the AFC West that you can rank them however you want, but there's 3 teams that I think are going to have something to say about this. The South is really interesting. Can Daniel Jones do it again? And has Jacksonville finally figured it out? And then there's Houston, which I think if they get good, not even necessarily great quarterback play from CJ Stroud, they might be the favorite in the AFC. So it seems to me like a more crowded field. So I can't just say it's Super Bowl or bust. But that is truly the only way that you can say that this season is better than last. So, with all that being said, how do they do it? How does this Broncos team navigate the minefield that they have awaiting them in the first half of the season? How do they navigate an AFC that I think is going to be more packed and stacked than it was a year ago? How do they do that? How do they make themselves better? Because that's always the thing. Like, you have to be better. You can't just maintain. The Kansas City Chiefs have found that out. Like, they got more out of it than most teams do, but they just maintained and maintained and maintained. And then it wasn't good enough to win a Super Bowl. Then it wasn't good enough to make the playoffs. You got to be better. You have to get better. And yes, Jalen Waddle is the player that you look at and say he makes the Denver Broncos better. But is he alone going to be enough? I don't think so. Two areas that the Denver Broncos have to be better in this year than they were a year ago. One of those, I go back to Pat Surtain on the defensive side. And I know it's hard. It's nitpicky because the defense was pretty good last year. But there is one hole in this defense that if they're going to be a better team this year and a better defense this year, they got to take the ball away from people.
That's true. I think we could do that when the ball's in the air, capitalize on more opportunities with taking the ball away. You know, obviously those game-changing plays are very vital, you know, in NFL games. Taking the ball away and just doing that would definitely help us a lot too.
Tied for the fourth fewest takeaways in the NFL last year, and they were a -3 in turnover differential. Defense does a lot of good. But if you're looking to the defense to be better, that's the easy place. They got to take the ball away more. And I'll put this second thing, really it applies to all three phases of the game. But I'm kind of looking more at the offense when it comes to what Quinn Meinerz talked about today, which is these one-score games that the Broncos were so good in last year.
You know, it's really cool that we have this like backbone to like not flinch in one-score games and like almost have, you know, a clutch element to our defense or to our offense. But I think it was like a historic like 11-2, and so like that doesn't happen very often. And so staying out of those situations and capitalizing earlier in those games. And I think we all kind of felt that as, you know, the offense kind of took a little bit to kind of get going. It was like a very slow, like, you know, how a train fully gets loaded up. It takes a long time for that train to get going. But once it does, it, you know, we had a lot of success there. So that's, you know, going to be our emphasis here in camp.
And I think Quinn Meinerz is spot on. I've been saying this. The best way for the Denver Broncos to be better in one-score games or to maintain their level in one-score games is actually to play in fewer of them. The math will get you. If you are playing in 13 one-score games, the Broncos will not win 11 of 13 one-score games. Let me start with the first promise of this Broncos season. They play 13 one-score games. They're not going to win 11 of them. And sure, it does say something about this Broncos team that they were able to win all of those close games. And you got that in your back pocket. If you do happen to be in a tight game, one-score game, you have demonstrated ability, as Sean Payton always says, that to be confident. But you need to be in fewer of these games. Too many things can happen. There's too many variables at play here. The Denver Broncos need to stay out of these one-score games. That's why they have Jalen Waddle. Right? You bring him in, hopefully, to Quinn Meinerz's point, the offense gets going sooner. The first quarter scoring by the Denver Broncos last year, 21st in the league. And you look at the top teams in that category last year, one was the Super Bowl champion, one was the AFC champion, and then you have the Rams, Indy, and Philadelphia. Those last year were elite football teams near the top of the standings. The Broncos, despite how few points they score in the first half, still ended up being an elite team. Got to get going sooner to hopefully, especially at home, get a little bit of breathing room. And that will also force some teams into maybe being a little less careful with the football and could lead to more takeaways. The desperation of, we got to get two scores. So the two of them actually play into one another. Staying out of the one-score games and taking the ball away. Two ways that the Broncos can be better than they were a year ago. 719-24-7. 13-13. Coming up next, what happens if the Protect College Sports Act does not pass? I will ask son of legendary football coach Joe Paterno and Penn State trustee Jay Paterno coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. We are getting closer to the college football season and the college sports season in general. I think it's important to acknowledge that what's going on in college athletics extends beyond football, and there are ramifications to all of these decisions that are being made. The Protect College Sports Act right now is being bandied about in the halls of Congress. Joining me now to discuss is a man who has lived in the world of college athletics. He is a coach. He has been a broadcaster. He is an author, and he is currently one of the members of the board of trustees at Penn State. He is Jay Paterno, joining us back again on the show. Jay, good to see you. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Doing well. Senator John Thune of South Dakota seems to have some confidence that the Protect College Sports Act is going to get a vote here. Where's your confidence level in this thing actually getting through and made into law?
Well, I think the next 24 hours are going to be critical. I think there's a lot of discussion. The SEC and the Big Ten have been, their commissioners have been a little bit late to the party to get involved and engaged. But they have been engaged. I know certainly there's been a lot of talk among trustees within the Big Ten, as well as in the SEC, about wanting to see something done to get the status quo. So I think there's a good chance we'll see something by the end of next week that this will be brought to the floor. If we can get the final, everybody. Now we're all fighting over the minutiae and the details. And I think if we can get that done in the next 24 hours, it'd be really interesting to see how this comes out.
Not to be a doomsdayer here, but is there a way that you see that college sports can, I don't know if I want to use the word fixed, get reined in, a return to some kind of normalcy without this legislation? Do you see a way that we can do that?
No, right now it's total chaos. Just imagine this, and if you're an NFL fan, imagine that every year every player is a free agent, and they can change every year if they want. So you have that part of it, and then you go and say, okay, there is no draft. The top players can pick where they want to go. And so, the best player coming out in the country can say, well, I'm really only interested in the 49ers and the Broncos and maybe the Cowboys. So I'm going to negotiate with those three teams and get the most I can get. And there's no structure. There's no salary cap, and they can spend whatever you want. And that's what you have in college football right now. And it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Would you say, not that there maybe is one thing that if this is fixed, then everything falls into place, but would the portal, would it be the standardizing the portal to where guys can't jump in or athletes can't jump in and out of it every year? Or is it the NIL money? I mean, what do you look at? What do you put at the top of your list on what is ailing college athletics right now?
Well, I think the most important thing is going to be the antitrust protection that this bill has, because with that, then you can put all the other things in place. So the transfer portal, obviously, there has to be some give and take. It can't be transfer every year for 4 or 5 straight years. There's got to be some limits in terms of the revenue sharing right now. There's no cap on it, so that's got to be in place. But without antitrust protection, you can't do that. And this bill would take some things. The athletes would have to give some things, but they'd also get a lot of protections too. So I think it's a very, very fair bill in that regard. But it all comes down on the ability to enforce the rules, and they need the antitrust protection that is in this bill to do that.
Jay Paterno, Penn State trustee, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. Do you think that there should be a different, you said enforceable rules, and obviously that would apply to every sport, but does there need to be 2 separate sets of rules for college football and men's basketball as opposed to the Olympic sports? Or do you think that if these rules can be put in place for everything from college football down to, I don't mean down to in terms of level, but just from college football to volleyball?
Right. Well, I think what you're seeing now is, which would surprise a lot of people, is that The women's volleyball coach at Penn State has won a national championship. I've known her for 25 years, and she will tell you, somebody comes to visit, and when the visit's over, you got to call their agent. So, I mean, it's already into those sports. Women's basketball is that way. Women's soccer is that way. So this is already spread far beyond football and men's basketball. So I think this bill has to help them as well. And one of the things that's going to be interesting in this is part of the revenue share cap. There's a $5 million set aside as a minimum for women's athletics on the revenue sharing cap. So there's going to be some teeth and some funds available that'll help with women's sports. I think that's a positive thing. And again, that's part of all the compromise back and forth that's had to happen between Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Maria Cantwell. I mean, I give them all the credit in the world because they have and their staff and the staff of all the senators and the Commerce Committee have really busted their tails to try and get something done. I think we need to get it done.
Jay Paterno, my guest, there at Penn State, how much have your conversations, whether it's with the athletic department, with your fellow board members, how much has it been? We got to that last question I asked. We can't just look at in terms of if we support it, if we don't, what we like, what we don't like. We just can't just look at it through the lens of football and men's basketball. We got to look at it for all of our sports. How much is there a stress in your neck of the woods to make sure that that you're helping all of your sports across the board at Penn State?
Well, I think it's vital. And I've had a lot of conversations with coaches here and at other schools, not just in football. And I've talked to, every sport has a coaches association. I've talked to the head of a couple of the coaches associations just to get their feel as to what their members are thinking. And everybody feels that there's got to be some legislation. And look, the NIL came into existence 5 years ago when California passed the law. And despite the NCAA's efforts and we've kind of let this thing go, and we've kind of let we really haven't had control of it. And the litigation and judges' decisions and judicial decisions have changed the rules and jolted us every time. And now this is for the first time where there's going to be a concerted effort by people to try and put all of this under one legislative piece that will then eliminate a lot of those judicial jolts that we get every 6 months or every 3 months or whatever it's been.
Jay Paterno, my guest. The SEC has been kind of tiptoeing the line between, we don't want a super league, but also, we may break away, which to me, I don't know. I don't know what the real difference is. If the SEC leaving the rest of the NCAA here kind of feels like their own super league. I get there's more to it than that, but is there any thought, any appetite inside the Big Ten to maybe the SEC and the Big Ten in college football, maybe men's basketball should just do their own thing and leave the rest of the college sports to be governed in this other way?
Well, I think there's been discussions among a range of different possibilities with the Big Ten, the SEC, but there hasn't really been a real coordinated, hey, let's the two of us get together. Mm-hmm. I don't think we like each other enough yet for that. There's a nice kind of sibling rivalry going on there between the Big Ten and the SEC. But mm-hmm. I think the reality is without the antitrust protections, and I was on a call months ago with Ted Cruz, back in February, very early part in this process. And I asked him point blank, I said, if the Big Ten or the SEC were to form a super conference, is there any way we would get antitrust protection? And he said, absolutely not. So, I mean, there's no question that we're not going to get antitrust protection in a bill for a super league. And that language is in the bill. I mean, I know it's one of those things that people kind of objected to early on, but I think the reality is this: we need each other. I mean, the college football needs to be strong in Colorado. It's going to be strong in Arizona. It's got to be strong in the West Coast. It's got to be strong across a lot of different leagues, because without it, people in those areas will start to lose interest in the overall product, and that hurts everybody.
Mm. Not totally on the topic that we're discussing with the college Protect College Sports Act, but I'm just curious. You speak to the rivalry between the SEC and the Big Ten. I think a large part of it is because you guys are winning their favorite sports championship every year. Oh, what is it right now with the Big Ten that has? I mean, the SEC. There's a reason why they are the power that they are. But in terms of on the field, on the court, what is it right now with the Big Ten that it seems like it's your conference that is ruling the college sports world in terms of winning championships right now?
Well, I think up until the last 3 or 4 years, proximity and geography really mattered in the recruiting process because you weren't getting paid. You didn't have a lot of money. So you wanted to be somewhere where your family could see you and you wanted to be able to get home every once in a while. And now with the money that guys are making, you're not really recruiting anymore so much as you are signing a roster. And so as you go out and look at what's happening is, we'll lose a kid in state because maybe it's a running back that we want, but we have 4 running backs on the roster and we don't have $1.2 million to commit to a running back, but another school may have that. And that works all over every which way. I think so. A lot of people are building really good rosters, but as I've said 100 times to members of our board, and I've said it to people I know in coaching, any fool with a checkbook can build a roster, a great roster of great talent. It takes a really outstanding coach to take that roster and build them into a team. And a true team will always defeat a collection of talent. And I think to be fair, I think the Big Ten right now has some of the best coaches in the country. Signetti's done a phenomenal job. Ryan Day's obviously done a phenomenal job. Kyle Whittingham coming into Michigan is a great addition to them. Us getting Matt Campbell is a great addition. There's so many really, really good. Even a guy like Greg Schiano at Rutgers, what he's been able to accomplish at Rutgers based on where they have been traditionally shows you what kind of coach he is. So I think there's a lot of great coaches in this league. And I think that's been another factor is that, the Big Ten is invested in everything.
Yeah. How high are you on the Nittany Lions this upcoming season, Jay?
Well, I think I've been to 2 practices and I like what I see. I like the way this team's playing. I like the way Matt Campbell's running the show right now in terms of how his approach to building teams. As I just mentioned, anybody can assemble a roster, but can you build a team? I think his track record has been he's always overproduced, overachieved based on the places he's been. But he's now at Penn State, so overachieving at Penn State is a whole nother stratosphere. And I think he's got the right mentality. I think he's a humble coach who believes in certain core values that I think really dovetail nicely with what has made Penn State unique. So I'm really excited about what they can do. I know there's people that have said, well, they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Oregon, they don't play Indiana. But again, no one knows in this era from year to year who's going to be the team.
Right.
I mean, last year, nobody had Fernando Mendoza on their Heisman Trophy watch list, and he won the dang thing. And nobody, I think a lot of people respected the kind of player he was. I don't think anybody saw the kind of year he would have. So, I think you don't know how the schedule's going to play out, but I'm really high on where Penn State is now, and I'm really even higher on where I believe they can go with Matt Campbell as a coach.
Well, when it comes to Penn State football or just the state of college athletics as a whole, I put a lot of stock into what you say, Jay. So it makes me feel good that you have optimism that this bill is going to keep on moving, and we'll see if it's got to make changes, and we'll follow along as we go. I would encourage listeners and viewers to certainly check Jay out on his website, jvpaterno.com. Does a great job on YouTube breaking down all of this stuff that makes my head spin. He gets it. That's why I have him on. Jay, hope you're doing well. Good to see you again, and we'll talk soon.
Good to see you, and I may be out for the Texas Tech UC game to run out with Ralphie. I've been had a discussion with the chancellor of Colorado. He used to be at Penn State. I said, "Look, there's one of those things in my life. I got to see a game in Folsom Field, but it's got to include me interacting with Ralphie. So if that happens, I will definitely let you know, and I will up my life insurance and medical insurance before I come out for that one."
Yeah, I would think so. Ralphie's not messing around, so
no.
If you are in our neck of the woods, I'd love to catch up then. For now, be well, Jay, huh?
Same to you. Thanks.
Yep, you bet. That is Jay Paterno, author, coach, analyst, and trustee at Penn State University with terrific insight into what is going on here. And he knows. He's been on calls with Cruz and Cantwell. He's been in these meetings. As he said, he's talked to leadership in college athletics, major college athletics. And we'll see what this thing looks like. We'll see what other revisions need to be made. I didn't have a high degree of optimism that anything was going to get done. And because of John Thune, and then John Thune comes out yesterday or today and is like, oh, no, we're good. So I don't know if he was talking about something else, but there was a comment he made that led me to believe that this thing wasn't going to get put to a vote until, the fall, because Congress is out and then they're coming back for like 2 weeks, and then they're out all of October and the beginning of November for the midterms. So that's a finite window to get this done. But perhaps, I don't know, something changed or Senator Thune just wanted to clarify his comments. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, none of this will impact this upcoming season. It will be the wild, wild west as always. But maybe the year after that, we might have some normal. I don't know if it's normalcy, but order. That would be the word. Order implemented into college athletics. 719-247-1313. Back after this. Whether you're a student, teacher, or parent, we could all use a little extra cash at the beginning of the school year. That's why we're giving 5 winners $1,000 to spend on any of your back-to-school needs. Head to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter this national contest for your chance to win the back-to-school shopping spree. Update out of San Francisco on Kyle Shanahan in this car crash. Now, there are a lot of people, including Dan Patrick on Extra Sports 1300 in the mornings, calling into question why we found out so far after the fact. And the idea that some people knew in media and did not report it. Why is San Francisco waiting so long to put it out there? There were some questions raised on that. I don't know that maybe it's because of this. The heat that was around the San Francisco 49ers for why not? If this is just what it is, it's an accident and it's a terrible accident. Why don't you just put it out there? Why do you have to wait 2 weeks till the start of training camp when you have no other choice but to tell everybody when they ask, well, where's Kyle Shanahan? Well, Kyle Shanahan told reporters today that the crash was his fault. Apparently, he had dropped his cell phone, and like, unfortunately, so many of us can't bear the thought of our cell phone being out of our reach, looked down for a second to reach for it, and the accident happened. So is this the reason why? Because Kyle Shanahan was at fault? I think it might be. I think it has to be. I mean, what other reason is there to sit on this story? And look, you can't do that. And that's dangerous. And we have been told for years that leave the cell phone alone. So Kyle Shanahan has to take the blame on this. But in a world where it seems like so few people in the sports world want to own up to anything and raise their hand and say, I screwed up, props to Kyle Shanahan for raising his hand. Maybe a little bit later than everyone would have liked, but trust me, there are a lot of peers of Kyle Shanahan's in the NFL and in other sports leagues that just try to hide and wait and hope that the truth doesn't come out. And this is Kyle Shanahan. I don't want to say getting out in front of it, but at least at some point raising his hand and say, I messed up. And thankfully, he and the young woman that were involved in the accident are both going to be okay. But it could have been a lot worse. So here's your reminder that we shouldn't need, but I'm not sitting on my high horse. Here's all of our reminder. Just leave the cell phone alone. But glad to know that Kyle Shanahan's going to be all right. Really busted up. 3 ribs broken, his hand, his nose, 40 stitches. Rough deal. And is taking a little step back at the beginning of Niners camp to recover. Talked about this a little bit yesterday because it was breaking at the time, and I've spent some time with this topic over the last 24 hours. The Vita Vea thing in Tampa Bay, and the idea of whether the Broncos should make a push. And I'm still in the place that I was yesterday. And if you didn't hear what's going on with Vita Vea, he's demanding a trade. Now, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. He's not the first NFL player to demand a trade in the middle of a contract impasse. And I believe the batting average of players getting their trade request approved and done by the teams is quite low. So this is this is part of the dance, right? Vita Vea thinks he deserves more money, which he absolutely does. Now, miss me with the idea that Vita Vea needs to come anywhere close to what Jalen Carter just received today from the Philadelphia Eagles, which makes him the highest paid defensive tackle in the history of the league. Vita Vea at one point was in that conversation. I don't know on the wrong side of 30 that he is anymore, but I think I saw he's like 17th highest paid defensive tackle. Like, the dude commands a double team. Still, that's valuable. That's better than the 17th best defensive tackle. So I'm on Vita Vea's side on this. It just matters where it's kind of like the Peyton Watson thing. Right? Like, yeah, it's your time to get paid. You should get paid. You have some value. Now let's not go crazy here and talk about Peyton Watson being worth $29 million. And let's not talk about Vita Vea deserving to be paid the same amount as Jalen Carter. But there's a middle ground. I think Vita Vea absolutely deserves a pay bump from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But as far as the Denver Broncos, I just don't like if we're playing Madden or we're playing fantasy football. Yeah, why not? Just played at the top of the hour. Pat Surtain, I'll play that audio for you again. The idea of it being Super Bowl or bust. A lot of people feel like that's the reality of the Denver Broncos. So if you can bring in somebody that commands so much attention on your defensive line when you have Zach Allen already on the line, somebody's going to get theirs. Somebody's going to be incredibly productive if you have Vita Vea and Zach Allen on the same defensive line, plus the Broncos pass rushers, or at least Nick Benito. We don't know what that pass rush room will look like when the season rolls around. But like, yeah, in a vacuum, it makes sense. But the Broncos already, I think, made a statement by letting John Franklin Myers go. And in no world is John Franklin Myers the caliber of player Vita Vea is. But I think it goes beyond the quality of player and the idea that they have a player that they like in Malcolm Roach that they think can step in and approximate what John Franklin Myers gave them. It goes beyond that. It was also the Denver Broncos establishing what is most important and what positions you can't, right? You can have Pat Surtain on one side, but you might have to have Riley Moss on the other. You can have Zach Allen on your defensive line, but you're going to have Malcolm Roach. Right? You can have Nick Benito and, until recent events, Jonathan Cooper on either side, but you're going to have to sacrifice those inside linebackers because you just can't pay everybody. You just can't create a super team. So you have to pick what positions matter the most to you. And in the hierarchy, defensive tackle, given that Zach Allen already commands a lot of attention and is incredibly productive, like, I get where the Broncos are going. I like John Franklin Myers, and I think he's going to be good for the Tennessee Titans, but I also understand where Denver is coming from. And then to take premium draft capital, which I'm sure is what Tampa Bay wants, for a team that has to start in some way. They got to take some of their attention to the world after they pay Bo Nix. And they haven't hit on a ton of draft picks. We have to be honest. Now, they haven't had as many, right? And that could be part of it because they've traded so much of their premium draft capital, including this year for Jalen Waddle. At some point, you got to reinvest in that part of team building. So you're going to give up more to bring in Vita Vea. And, oh, by the way, you think Vita Vea is just going to happily join the Denver Broncos and be like, my contract schmontract. At least I'm in Denver now. No, you got to trade for him, and then you have to pay him. And when the Denver Broncos have made it clear that defensive tackle is not a position where they're willing to break the bank, I just don't see the fit. I see in a vacuum, in a make-believe land, that Vita Vea would be incredible on the Denver Broncos. I don't begrudge Broncos fans for dreaming, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Denver Broncos to go after this. Now, the Dallas Cowboys operate in a very different way of the Denver Broncos, and Jerry Jones alluded to the idea that he had conversations about landing a star player yesterday. I wonder who that was. He didn't say, so we're all speculating, but the timing seems quite coincidental. Vita Vea demands a trade, and here's Jerry Jones saying he had a conversation about acquiring a star player. A team like Dallas, they march to the beat of their own drum. I could see that. Chicago. But again, I look at the AFC West, and I know it'll be tough to see Vita Vea go to Vegas, but I think Vegas is a team he wants to go to, and I think it's a team that might be in play for him. So we'll see. But I said this yesterday, we're a long way out. This is part of the dance. This is the next step. And now we'll see if Vita Vea is willing to hold out into miss games. Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or whether you're watching the show on our social media platforms. We certainly do appreciate it. My kids appreciate it. So think of my kids when you're deciding what show in the afternoon to listen to. If you would like to take your participation in today's show to the next level, like Aaron just did during the break, him and I had a good chat about what was going on with college sports in my interview with Jay Paterno. If you'd like to call or text into the show, 719-247-1313 is the number. If you are watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, or X, you could simply drop a comment right there. Now, you may have a thought or two on the three stories that are driving this show today. All right. I got two Broncos stories for you and one Nuggets story. So let's get the two Broncos ones going here first. Here is Pat Surtain answering the big question: is it Super Bowl or bust in Denver this season?
No, obviously that's the main goal, but it starts right here in training camp. It starts through early on in the season. I think our main focus is to start off fast. Start off, hot and early, so that way we could prepare ourselves to get, to that stage.
And I think Surtain brings up a phenomenal point, because don't forget the gauntlet that is awaiting the Denver Broncos when this season begins. I think I got to imagine when they look at the schedule, it's like we can't even be thinking about December, January, and February right now, because we got to be on our game immediately. I mean, we got Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald potentially visiting us, or we're visiting them. I forget where that game is, but we got them early on. Got the return of Mahomes immediately Monday night, week 1. I mean, I understand. Sometimes it's just player speak, one game at a time. I think the Broncos would be wise to take it one game at a time, because their first 6 or 7 games are tough. And I think that's where you truly make the decision on whether it's Super Bowl or bust. If this team gets on the plus side of that and they knock off a bunch of the teams that they face, then I think that you raise the bar and you say, yeah, this is a team that should be going to the Super Bowl. Look at all the teams that they're knocking off along the way, kind of like last year. Right? They dethroned Kansas City. They beat Philadelphia. Like, there were these key wins where we're like, okay, maybe the Broncos are at another level than they were a year prior. As of right now, I don't look at this Broncos season as Super Bowl or bust. I think the circumstances surrounding them getting to the AFC Championship, and I do agree with many Broncos fans in that if Bo Nix is healthy in the AFC Championship, they go to the Super Bowl. Okay? But with that being said, I think the pendulum starts to swing back the other way. Last year, it was wide open in these teams that you didn't really expect. New England, Indy, Denver emerged and took advantage of it because they got their stuff right, and there were teams that weren't. But Buffalo's still going to be around. I think Baltimore with Jesse Minter, I'm really high on them, and I think there's no way Kansas City is a 6-win football team again. Do I think Kansas City is a Super Bowl contender? I got to see more from them than I got to see from the Denver Broncos to believe that they can win a Super Bowl. But they're going to be better. And Mike McDaniel is now in L.A. coaching Justin Herbert. So I think and right now, Joe Burrow is healthy. Right? So I look at the AFC and I say it's a lot more crowded than it was a year ago. Now that could change, but at the start of training camp, I think that there are just too many teams. And I don't think that the Broncos are a Super Bowl team, so I don't think it's Super Bowl or bust. But the good news for them is they got most of these teams early on in the season, and if they start to knock them off, then it's like, okay, now we can have a different conversation. Getting to a Super Bowl would be the only way that you could unequivocally say this season is better than the last. But I don't know that I am placing Super Bowl or bust expectations on the Denver Broncos. But that's the thing. It's based on what you think they can do and what you think they have left to accomplish. Is Super Bowl or bust mean getting to a Super Bowl or winning one? Because they haven't even gotten to one yet. But there's no doubt expectations, in Denver are high. And I don't think we've had a season in many years where the expectations were this high. I stopped short of Super Bowl or bust. Story number 2, also from the Denver Broncos. You may have heard that they got some new digs up there in Inglewood. Here's Quinn Meinertz, Broncos offensive lineman.
I've already noticed how much closer everything is. Like in the previous building, weight room, you have to walk. I mean, it sounds so spoiled, but you have to walk a little bit to go to the weight room. And right now the weight room is like connected to the locker room pretty much. So like everything is so close. Those little minutes of time, do add up throughout the day. So it'll be nice to just have a really good flow.
And good self-awareness, first of all, for Quinn Meinertz, because with this new practice facility that they have opened up, it's very easy to kind of roll your eyes when you hear players talk about how much better it is and how much more beneficial it is. That was a question posed to him about whether it can help performance. But athletes are finely tuned machines. Their routine is incredibly important, and their time is incredibly important. And the fact that they can save time and the fact that they can, have a better routine and be in world-class facilities, it does matter. It does. And I don't know. Does it get them a game this year? I don't know. I can't do that. Does a great practice facility earn you one more win? I don't think so. But I do think morale is higher. I think the team has a chance to be even better prepared with some of this. Mark Cuban, the thing that he did to turn around the Dallas Mavericks, who were a joke of a franchise. First thing he did, make their locker room one of the nicest locker rooms in the NBA. This is the first thing he did. And that helped start the turnaround. Was it the be-all, end-all? No, because if you have garbage players in that locker room, it's not going to do you a lick of good. But the first thing is to make players feel like they're in a world-class facility, that they're getting the best coaching, they're getting the best nutrition, and they're not, having to schlep it around and no wasted energy and all of that kind of stuff. It does matter. Now, does the practice facility matter to you as a fan? Not nearly as much as it matters to the players. And that's where Quinn Meinertz is like, I get it. It sounds like we're spoiled. But this stuff matters. And you can't also, roll your eyes at the benefits of the Broncos facility and then look and then tell the Avalanche and the Nuggets that they got to do better than their American Legion gym in Ball Arena and playing at the Family Sports Center. Right? I mean, there's pressure on the Cronkies for years to upgrade the practice facilities. You can't do that and then turn around and say it's nothing that the Broncos have this beautiful world-class facility. Either it matters or it doesn't matter. And I think it does matter for the Kroenke teams. It's got to matter for Greg Penner's team. But you could check that out when you go up to training camp, as they'll have a few open dates. I believe they've improved the where you sit, too, for training camp. So they don't gloss over the details. Greg Penner and his ownership group, they don't. And it's sometimes those niceties that keep adding up and ultimately make a difference. Story number 3 is the latest chapter in the Peyton Watson saga. A report out of The Athletic that the Nuggets' initial offer to Peyton Watson is 5 years, $70 million, which to me, just taking away the spot that the Nuggets are in when it comes to the second apron, that seems fair. You think there's potential with Peyton Watson, but there's limited, and I've stolen this completely from Sean Payton, demonstrated ability from Peyton Watson, right? You don't have a ton of evidence that Peyton Watson is going to be a core player for this team and be a real difference maker. But you also have seen enough where you go, I kind of like to see more of this guy. That seems like a fair number. Rich Paul does not agree. And so it seems like they're pretty far apart right now, which may mean a trade is the more likely outcome right now than Peyton Watson returning to the Denver Nuggets, because it would be a bad move for the Nuggets in the state that they are in to just play it out 1 year on the qualifying offer for Peyton Watson and then lose him. If you have a chance to get something for him and you're at an impasse with the contract, then you got to move him. The Nuggets got to be proactive for once. As far as that part of the equation goes, Shams Charania of ESPN reporting that the asking price for Peyton Watson has come down from the Nuggets. Before, it was 2 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps, which I think would be more than the Celtics got for Jaylen Brown. So if I'm another team, I'm probably not going to give that up. Now it's give us one high-level player, but understand the Nuggets are in the financial position they're in. Not a star, right? That's not what they're asking for, but they're asking for a high-level young player, because young equals cheap, and a first-round pick. So it's less than what they were asking for before. We'll see if somebody does it. I think the fact of the matter is, for both the Nuggets, if they want to move on from Watson, and Watson, if he wants to go and get paid, I just think that the market is not conducive to that. But it seems like the Nuggets opening themselves up to maybe being talked into a trade. And maybe it's because their offer, which I feel is fair, is being balked at by the good folks at Clutch Sports. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. That is what I feel like you need to know in the sports world today. How about what you need to know in the financial world? For that, I turn to my friend Rick Stevens of FRS Financial right here in Colorado Springs with his RBG report, Rick's Best Guess. Rick, what have you got for us today?
U.S. stocks opened the day mixed as AI concerns weighed on investors' minds, as well as that uncertainty around the upcoming Fed policy decision this week. A slide in oil prices midday, though, moved us back into positive territory. The markets have been stuck between that AI-driven sell-off the news of the pause in the Middle East again, as Iran has tried to express an interest in negotiating. Our Fed governors began their two-day policy meeting today in their interest rate decision. That is expected to come in on Wednesday, and Rick's best guess is that we will not see any movement with this decision as the governors await further information on inflation and jobs ahead of that next meeting in September. Analysts are predicting an 80% chance of a rate hike at that point, but we'll have a guess when it gets there. That's all the RBG report for the day.
Appreciate Rick. That's Rick Stevens of FRS Financial Group. Man, does he know his stuff. He's right here in Colorado Springs. Start planning your future today at frsfinancialgroup.com.
Products and investment services offered through LPL Financial LLC. Member FINRA SIPC. FRS Financial Group is a name used by independent advisors associated with LPL Financial LLC.
Coming up next, the people covering the WNBA when it comes to Caitlin Clark, they just can't help themselves when not listening to Caitlin Clark herself. That's next. Half off and sometimes even better. That's the power of sweet deals. Save 50% or more on restaurants, family fun, attractions, and more. To shop, go to extrasports1300.com or kvor.com. So it just boggles my mind. So WNBA All-Star Game is this weekend. Caitlin Clark sits down with Malika Andrews of ESPN and talks about, I thought in a very good, candid interview, about what it's like to be her right now. And one thing that she talked about stood out to me, and that is the weight on her shoulders about what faceless trolls are saying online.
When I walk out of the locker room, I shouldn't be not fearful of what the conversation is going to be, but you know, you just like, it's emotionally exhausting. It's draining. It makes your shoulders tense because, you know, people don't want to talk about the basketball. They just want to stir it up and make it something else.
And this is, look, it was through the context of the Alyssa Thomas thing. The problem with the Alyssa Thomas incident where Thomas put her knee into the groin of Caitlin Clark and put her fist into the throat of Caitlin Clark was that issue, to me, was more about the inability for the officiating in the WNBA to get things under control. And if that wasn't dealt with, like, there's always going to be discourse online, but it got worse because nothing was done about it. And the WNBA had to go back in retrospect and fix that. Okay. But this applies to the vitriol that other players around the league are getting, and these people who are masquerading as Caitlin Clark fans that are delivering this. And it's horrible what's happened. I mean, we live in the year 2026, and some of the things that are being thrown out on social media towards these women, it's just pathetic that people would behave this way. But what's unfair about it, that's unfair to them. And maybe that is the bigger issue in all of this. When players are getting racist threats and death threats, that is obviously more important than, you know, Caitlin Clark feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. But can't we kind of attack both issues? One, stop doing this. Right? Be an adult, be a decent human being. You could be critical of players. We do this in other sports all the time. You could be critical. You can even say that they're terrible. But to go to, you know, sexism and racism, it's just no place for that. But then on the other side, let's think about this too with Caitlin Clark. Okay? These people are masquerading as Caitlin Clark fans. Right? But yet the players in the league and the people covering the league can't see it for what it is, that these are just crazy people, pathetic people who are saying these things, and they're not actually fans of Caitlin Clark, and they're not actually associated with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark does not know these people. So the fact that she has to stand up all the time and answer for this, that's what she's talking about. Like, the WNBA world is putting it on Caitlin Clark to fix racism and to fix sexism. And isn't that a little much to put on somebody like Caitlin Clark? Not everybody's built for that. You know, there's Muhammad Ali, there's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There are even players in the WNBA. I saw Marina Mabrey made an amazing donation to help minorities have better access to healthcare. That's amazing. Paige Beckers the other night stumped for saying there needs to be more black women who are coaching in the WNBA. That's awesome. And if they can use their voice and they're comfortable doing that, that's great. But why we put that standard on everybody? You know what this reminds me of? Remember when Michael Jordan, and this was chronicled in The Last Dance, that Michael Jordan was facing a ton of criticism because he would not come out in support of Harvey Gantt. And Harvey Gantt was running against a blatant racist. And people felt like, as the country's most powerful African-American, that Michael Jordan should stand up and say, you should vote for this guy because this other guy is racist. And that's where the famous line of Republicans buy shoes too came out, and he took a ton of criticism for it. So it reminds me of that they're looking to the most popular player in the league, which, by the way, that would be some kind of an admission from the WNBA world, because there's so many people in that sphere that refuse to acknowledge that Caitlin Clark is the league's most predominant star. Not the best player. No one has argued that she's the best player, but she's the biggest star, and that's just the fact of the matter. So the fact that you put this on her to do it, maybe at least say that as the face of the league, as the league's biggest star, she should say something, but they can't even bring themselves to do that because it would be betraying the sisterhood to say that Caitlin Clark's the biggest star instead of Asia Wilson. Biggest star doesn't necessarily mean best player. But here's the difference between the heat that Michael Jordan took back then and what Caitlin Clark's going through now. Caitlin Clark has come out multiple times, 4 times at least by my count. She has taken time in some press conference or media scrum to say that she does not endorse the abuse that her fellow WNBA players are taking. She has said that there is no place for sexism and racism in the WNBA. She has told people to stop. She has said, don't do these things in my name. She has done that 4 times, at least. Michael Jordan never once came out and supported Harvey Gantt. Caitlin Clark has done exactly what the WNBA hopes that she would do, or the WNBA players and people that cover the WNBA hope that she does. She's done that. So my question is, how many more times does she have to do it? And also, let's be honest, athletes have great power in our society, but tell me the last time that an athlete was actually able to talk to people who would conduct themselves in this way online. They are looking for a reason, and Caitlin Clark holding up her hand and saying, stop doing that, is not going to stop them. But it's like they put this on her that she has to answer for these people. And every time a player in the WNBA is threatened, Caitlin Clark has to step to a microphone and denounce it. That's the weight on her shoulders that is unfair. So she's being candid with Malika Andrews. She's being transparent and saying it's getting to be too much. I just want to play basketball. Which you can respect other players for not just wanting to play basketball, but you can't be upset if somebody just wants to go and do their job. And the fact of the matter is, Caitlin Clark hasn't just done her job. Again, she's spoken out against all of this stuff multiple times. So she says that, and that's a point where I think would engender some kind of sympathy that this star is being weighed down by all of this. But yet 24 hours later, this is what Monica McNutt says on ESPN about Caitlin Clark.
I thought the word of being fearful of the conversation after a game that she alluded to was interesting, because oftentimes it seems, at least in the larger discourse, and not that there's not an emotional experience for Caitlin Clark, because I believe that it is, but it's the folks that are accused of doing something outside of the parameters of competition that are actually the ones that are fearful when you look at their social medias. This is what I will say. Caitlin Clark is 24. She is a shining star in the galaxy of the WNBA. But I do think as she continues to matriculate through this league, there's room for a little bit more accountability and self-awareness in terms of her role in the larger sisterhood, if she sees it that way, in the WNBA.
It's unbelievable, the double standard. You do everything in your power to make her out to be not the biggest star in the league. And yet you turn around and say basically she needs to conduct herself as the face of the league, which is stand up for every other player in the league. Can you at least admit not that she's a shining star, she is the star? And the responsibility thing, like, are you kidding me with that? Again, these are people who are mentally off, hateful people that Caitlin Clark cannot talk down. She's come out multiple times and said she doesn't endorse this and she wishes people would stop. And yet these people keep going. Why? Because they're just looking for an excuse. Some of the people that cover the league and some of the players in the league want Caitlin Clark to do all of this stuff for them, but they're unwilling to help prop her up. What about this? Does the sisterhood extend to her? Can Caitlin Clark be a part of the sisterhood? I mean, if this thing exists and it's a little bit different than the NBA, we don't talk about whether, Nikola Jokic and LeBron James get along. In fact, we think that rivalries are healthy, just as long as they're, guys aren't fighting each other on the court. But everybody's got to be together in lockstep, and that's a fine sentiment. But Caitlin Clark has at least 4 times on 4 different occasions come out and said, all of this is wrong. Stop threatening. Stop hurling hateful, racist, sexist messages at WNBA players. And yet they want more. I mean, I've talked about how I don't know that the WNBA is ever going to figure this out to reach truly the level that they can reach in terms of popularity in this country. I'm starting to wonder if Caitlin Clark is ever going to have the career that we thought she could have. If she's carrying this burden around and 24 hours after she opened up and said, this is weighing on me, another prominent member of the media that covers the WNBA is saying, we need more from you. I mean, she's already dealt with injuries. Now she's dealing with this stuff. I mean, how much more do you want from her? While still, by the way, doing everything you can to not acknowledge that she is the face of the league. She is the biggest star. Maybe if they at least did that and said, Paige Beckers is better and Asia Wilson is better and go down the list, and that's all well and good. But the NBA has this. The face of their league is LeBron James. Is he their best player? He's not even the best player on his own basketball team now. There's a difference. So can you at least acknowledge that Caitlin Clark is the face of the league, is its biggest star, before you start wanting all this stuff from her? Maybe level with her a little bit and support her, include her in the sisterhood. I feel bad. And I feel bad for the players who are getting these hateful messages to them. I would say a big issue with the WNBA is they are too online. They're too online. And it sucks that they have to change their lifestyle because of what people say on social media, but many athletes have made this pivot and don't get on social media or don't get on social media as much. You hate that that's the reality, but that's the reality. Just, yeah, I do, but I do also feel bad for Caitlin Clark. That she's carrying this burden while meanwhile it seems like the league and her fellow players and the people that cover the league are doing everything they can to not prop her up, not encourage her and support her. She has to support them. They don't have to support her. 719-24-7-1313. Back after this. Air Force football season kicks off in just a few weeks. What if I told you could win 4 season tickets to Air Force football this season? Sounds pretty good, right? Well, starting next week, you will have your chance every day to qualify, 2 chances each day to qualify. One time with Jim Arthur and Sean Martinez on Colorado Springs Morning News, 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. on 740 KVOR. And then you'll have another opportunity with me in the afternoons to be able to qualify to win season tickets. We'll get some qualifiers, then we'll pick a winner, and you will be rolling to every single Air Force home football game this upcoming season. So be listening out for that. Speaking of the football, but at the professional level, although the lines have been quite blurred recently between college and professional football, haven't they? The Raiders, just like the Denver Broncos, reporting to camp, going to be out on the field tomorrow. And Clint Kubiak has said that Kirk Cousins is the starter. Not an open competition. It is Kirk Cousins' job. He said when we go out to practice tomorrow, Kirk Cousins is the starting quarterback. He's the guy, and he's going to get a ton of reps, and he deserves them because he played really good football. And then added, but I want Fernando and I want Aiden, that being Aiden O'Connell, to push him. First-year head coach Clint Kubiak, but he's been around the block. Remember, his dad was the coach of the Denver Broncos. He knows what to say. First of all, you could just drop Aiden O'Connell. I mean, you could keep him on the roster. I'm just saying you don't need to bring him up. You're going to bring him up because you're trying to coach up everybody and all of this kind of stuff. I get it. There is no world in which everybody is healthy and the top option is Aiden O'Connell. Okay? There's no way. Okay? So we don't need Aiden O'Connell mentioned. This is between Mendoza and Cousins. And this is absolutely the right way to go about it. This is why you bring in Kirk Cousins. Forget what he said about playing good football. You watched him in Atlanta. I don't know how much good football Kirk Cousins has left in him. But the fact of the matter is this is about Fernando Mendoza. And if you can get away with not starting him week 1, then you will do it. So don't put that pressure on him. He doesn't have to win the job. It's Kirk Cousins' job, and allow for yourself to be able to change your mind. And that's what we'll wait and see. I don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility for Fernando Mendoza. I know he burst onto the scene this year, but he played, Jay Paterno and I were talking about this last hour. I mean, Fernando Mendoza was a good quarterback at Cal. And he's got a lot of games under his belt, right? So no one has more games than Bo Nix, but the quarterbacks that are coming out are more seasoned than they have been at any point in NFL history. So I don't rule out the possibility that Fernando Mendoza looks up to the task of being the starting quarterback of the Vegas Raiders. The question becomes, are the Raiders ready to support Fernando Mendoza? You have Ashton Genty. I would say his rookie year did not live up to the hype, not even close. Brock Bowers did not have a good year last year. Trust me, I had him in fantasy football. And they don't have a lot outside of that. Bo Nix, think about what the Broncos did for Bo Nix. Before they even knew they were going to have Bo Nix. Sean Payton comes in with Russell Wilson as his quarterback, and the first thing he does is invest in the offensive line. Okay? And put the scaffolding up to be able to prop up a young quarterback. And then along comes Bo Nix, the most grizzled veteran in the history of college football, and you had a a system, you had the coaching, you had the everything in place for Bo Nix to be able to play week 1. And I don't see anybody looking back and say it was a mistake to start Bo Nix from day 1. I don't look at the Raiders and say they are set up quite the same way as the Denver Broncos were. There's more work to this roster that needs to be done before I feel like Fernando Mendoza will be placed in a situation where he could be successful. But I also know this universal truth about the NFL, and you know this as well. There is no more powerful siren song than a rookie quarterback. And coaches look exactly like Odysseus in the Odyssey, strapped to the mast and screaming, listening to the siren song. It is so, and that's not spoilers. There's a lot of other stuff that happens in the movie. There is no more powerful siren song than being able to play a rookie quarterback, right? You play a rookie quarterback, it resets the timeline, right? Expectations go down. People are happy. Here's the future. Everybody's bullish on it. It is very difficult to resist. And as much as I see, Clint Kubiak's in year 1, the guy's got a long leash, right? Unless he's an epic disaster, which I don't believe that he will be. He's going to have more than this just this year. Right? There's a lot of new in Vegas. So I feel like the temptation is not going to be as great for the Raiders to go to Mendoza as it would be in other situations. But that siren song is powerful. And if the Raiders stub their toe, 0-3, 1-4, Kirk Cousins is throwing picks left and right, even for a first-year head coach, it's going to be hard to fight that urge. In fact, so much so that I don't think there is any way that Fernando Mendoza is not the starting quarterback of the Raiders at some point this season. I don't think there's any way. The real question is just how long can Kubiak hold out? I think he can hold out till week 1. Even if Mendoza, and I like Fernando Mendoza a lot, I think we're going to get reports out of Raiders camp that he's good to go. I think we're going to get that. But you got to fight it. You got to take a beat. This team's not ready. This team's not ready to maximize Fernando Mendoza's ability, to protect him, to help develop him. They're just not. But that doesn't mean there's not a place where you can fit him in. I think the ideal scenario for the Raiders is just grin and bear it, being clearly the 4th best team in the AFC West and not even really being that close to the other 3 teams. Play the games. See if you can get Brock Bowers looking more like the Brock Bowers of old. See if they're on the hook a little bit with Ashton Genty, and I can't say that I didn't warn them. They got to get that dude going. If there is a young player on the Vegas Raiders that the Raiders need to get up and running this season, it's Ashton Genty. It's not Fernando Mendoza. So I think the ideal scenario is to try the best that you can. I know the noise gets very loud, and it will continue to get louder. The drum beat for Raiders fans to want to see Fernando Mendoza. But if Clint Kubiak can plug his ears, put the wax in his ears, and not listen to it, and go 12 weeks, continuing to pour into Fernando Mendoza and getting him more ready to go. And then the last month of the season, hand him the keys and say, here you go, Raider fans. Here's your future. Not saying it's going to look great when Mendoza takes over, but then at that point, you're ahead for the next season. Right? You've got him some games. Now you got some tape to work with. You got some habits that you can either correct or reinforce. And then Mendoza ready to rock and roll full blown as the starting quarterback next season. That's the ideal scenario. And that's the ideal scenario in so many NFL cities that draft a rookie quarterback. But it is very, very difficult to resist the temptation, even for an organization that is essentially starting over like the Raiders are. But Kirk O'Chains right now, he's the dude. I think it's going to be very hard. I think Mendoza's going to look really good in camp. I do. So no quarterback competition in Vegas. Is the only quarterback competition we have in Minnesota? That's disappointing. We need more quarterback. We always used to be able to bank on Denver. Now we don't even have that anymore. Where are our quarterback competitions? Is Atlanta one with Tua and Penix? That's as sad as some of the Broncos quarterback competitions over the years. Tua and Penix. Oy, oy. I guess that might be one, but Minnesota's the main one between Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy. I expect Kyler to win that. I do. Want to tell you before I go about Game Day Men's Health, and I think it's a truism whether it comes to your health or your car or your home. You know, sometimes the best thing you can do is the preventative maintenance, right? Don't wait till something messes up to go get it fixed, right? And it can help you in the long run. And I feel like that's the tact that Game Day Men's Health takes. So maybe you're not dealing with some of the things that you deal with when you become older, but you could hear very soon. So why not put in some preventative maintenance? Why not get ahead of it? And also too, it could just enhance your life already. So if you're like, well, nothing's wrong with me. Well, that doesn't have to be what it is. And that's what I found out with Game Day Men's Health. They can help you. They can look forward into the future and say, you may want to think about this. GameDayMen'sHealth.com is where you go. Their location is down by the Broadmoor. Great people that will help you out and truly looking out for your health. Talk to you tomorrow.